three critical skills you must have today. You've got to understand data, you've got to know how to make good decisions, and then the most hardest of them all is communication. Data is hard itself, because you talk about there's big data, and then there's small data. Big data is where they just collect a lot of information and they tell you what is going on, right? Small data is where you have to make your observation. So an example that I want to give you here has to do with this product that you're all familiar with, Febreze, right? That air freshener. When Procter & Gamble first launched this product, when they tried to launch it, it didn't succeed. They couldn't figure out why is this product that can remove some of the worst odors is not moving. They come across examples with one forest ranger who doesn't have a love life because she catches these wild animals, and some of them tend to be skunk, and she gets sprayed and she cannot retain boyfriends. Now, they gave her this Febreze, and afterwards they went to see her, and she was crying, said, "You just changed my life. I had no social life, now I do, thanks to your product." And these Procter & Gamble people now think that they're high-fiving, we got it now, we finally got our story that we need. And they're marketing it, it's not moving. And then they said, okay, let's try that may be a little bit far out, forest rangers. So they found people who have pets. And they found a woman that had 9 cats, and she said, I'd like to get rid of the smell. And the product did that. But still, the product doesn't move. Because the problem there is that she's not using the product. The problem is that people who have odors, they get desensitized to it. So they don't use the product. Then finally, to make the story short, they interviewed this one woman who has 4 boys. And they asked her, what kind of foul smell are you trying to get rid of? She said, "No, I'm not using it that way." And they're like, "What?" That's how we built this product, so that people would get rid of. Said, "No, after I clean their room, I'll just spray it on their comforter and the carpet, so that I get the satisfaction of cleaning their room. Because I got 4 boys, and I don't want their room to smell like locker room. And I use a bottle every 2 weeks." Whoa, that's something new. Wait a second. They had assumed that everybody that was going to buy this product was going to buy it to get rid of foul odors. Now they have to redo their marketing, and the product is not used in the front end, it's used in the back end. That means it's used as a reward. That's how so they had to redo the product where they had to put more scent in it, so now more people would use it, and also do the marketing that would promote that's how this product can be used. And suddenly this product became a $1 billion category. So the point here is, there's data there. But as an executive, you've got to know both the big data, what it's telling you, and the small data. And then the ultimate is the decision making, is the reason why somebody's an executive. Jeff Bezos says he makes 3 decisions a day, and that usually happens between 10 and 12. Warren Buffett said he'd be lucky if he makes 3 good investment decisions during a year. And Ronald Reagan used to say, I'd be lucky if I make 3 good decisions throughout my presidential term. So decision making is not that simple. That's what executives do. That's why they get paid the big bucks. But decision making means that there is that human element. And one of my famous quotes, it's not a quote, but it's something I read in this book, which pretty much sets the stage. And it comes from this book by David Halberstam called The Best and the Brightest. And it's very early on. It's one of his favorite quote, actually. There is a quote there. And what happens is that Kennedy had put together one of the smartest cabinet ever, John F. Kennedy. And Lyndon Johnson attended that first cabinet meeting, and he just was blown away how smart the people were in that meeting. And he goes and sees his mentor, Sam Rayburn, who was the Speaker of the House. And he says, "Sam, you couldn't believe how smart these people are, especially that Robert McNamara. He's just a genius." And Sam listens to him and says, "Well, Lyndon, you may be right, They may be smarter, one smarter than the next, but I would feel more comfortable if one of them had run for sheriff once. So the point he's making is that intelligence alone isn't going to solve problems. You need wisdom. And wisdom, for many, some in that room, came after Vietnam. So decision making is not that simple. You need data, you need your own intuition, and then you need wisdom. So this is something that's becoming more and more apparent as we are seeing some of the actions some of these executives are taking. The real hard one is the communication. You can have the data, you can make the decision making, but how do you get your message across? This is where you're either going to succeed or fail. So this is like an obstacle, right? You've been past that, you got this, now comes the communication. And communication is getting more and more difficult. It's simply because we got people who are asking the simple question all the time. So what, who cares? And you're done. And you don't have much time. How do you get your message across? One of the things that I came across recently when I was listening to Bob Schieffer, who was to be a Face the Nation, and he said something very interesting. He said that the president that is usually the successful presidents, they dominate the current medium of communication. And he goes through the history, says that the founding fathers were very good writers. And then came Abraham Lincoln, was probably one of our greatest public speaker of all time, but he was still a writer too. Then FDR, he mastered radio. And he realized in radio, you can't just yell at people. You have to have that conversation. So he created this fireside chats. So he mastered that medium, radio. Then of course came Kennedy, television. He knew exactly how to talk, he had the looks for it, and the humor, and he was just fantastic for that medium. Then came Reagan. Reagan brought stagecraft to presentation. And he's the first one who actually had used the First Lady box. Remember when that Air Florida plane crashed and he had that guy, Lenny Skutnik, I remember? That's when it all started, when they started having people sitting next to the First Lady, and they point out, let's honor this person, let's honor that for their accomplishment, business leaders, all of them. It started with Reagan, because he was a master at stagecraft because of his acting background. And then, now we have Donald Trump, who has mastered social media. So, what that means is that if you're an executive, you essentially have to be a five-tool communicator. By that means, you not only have to write well, you not only have to give speeches like this, but you also have to be good on traditional media. Then you need to know something about stagecraft, and you've got to be good at social media. So you see how difficult communication has gotten today? And that's what's needed today, because an executive today is essentially the chief communication officer. And this is something that Lloyd Blankfein, who's the CEO of Goldman Sachs, and he said, one of the biggest mistakes I made after the Great Recession was not taking my message out on social media. That we got so much flack, but we were doing so many good things that we just didn't get our message out. If I had to do one thing again, I would have been more out on social media to get my message out, not just to the people on the business side, but also to the common man, so they knew that what Goldman Sachs was doing, so we didn't have to take all that flack.